Do you have any opinions on lessons that can be learnt from Próspera as an example? Because now we see the situation that Próspera's in, and I don't mean it in a negative way. I don't think this is the end of Próspera at all. But what are the lessons we can learn from the sort of timeline that they've been on?
Yeah, I kind of just bring it back to our conversation earlier. I think a lot of it needs to focus on early development of a broad base of support. And I think that to some degree, for better for worse, there are some people who will never support a charter city type project, whatever kind it is, right? It doesn't matter if it's focused on like maybe innovative industries or if it's focused on, the working class. There's some people out there who just will hate the project for whatever reason, right? I don't know if it's 5% or 10% of a population, wherever, but some people will never like it, right? And some people will probably like it no matter what. Like you'd have to like be very, very bad in order for them to dislike it. So if you're looking at like, 70, 80% of a population who is sort of initially indifferent to the idea, I think that's the sort of group you really need to focus on developing support among, right? So that is, sort of the track I would take. I think Próspera is sort of a case study to some degree or another in the sort of negative perceptions about it were baked in prior to Próspera even existing, right? So because, as Mark mentioned earlier, you had this sort of political crisis prior to the passage of the Red Law and then the Zeta Law, you had, perceptions early on that were not always great, regardless of how much investment Próspera brought, regardless of how many people Ciudad Morazanas helped. There was the perception, a much larger popular perception that maybe these projects were not good than I think needed to start with that, right? So I do think a lot of the approach you need to take for making sure these projects end up being successful is it needs to be thought about from like the beginning, and the beginning is way before the legislation is passed. It's when you're sitting down and thinking of the project you want to create, part of your thought process needs to be, how am I going to develop support? How am I going to make this as non-controversial as possible among the largest number of people possible?